Gabriel Montiel, aka Werevertumorro, was the most influential YouTuber in Mexico. No, not in Mexico, just in Latin America as a whole. But because of a contract that he decided to sign with his manager, he was getting less than $100 a week. And in this video, I'm going to tell you the whole story behind that. You probably don't know much about the YouTuber that I'm talking about, but in Mexico and Latin America, he's considered a pioneer. You know, like one of the first ones to do YouTube as a full-time job. So this whole thing started in 2007 when Gabriel Montiel decided to open his channel alongside his friend. In this point, they were high school students that were about to graduate, and they were interested in studying communication. So they opened the YouTube channel as a way to start getting used to being on camera, editing, and just practicing everything that you need to know. They did that for a couple of months until they graduated. And during that summer, they decided to start working. So basically, they were editing random videos for a company called Rancho Studios. And during the time that they were working there, they met Javier Talan, the CEO of the company, and the man who was going to be their manager in the future. But basically, the first time that they meet is not a meaningful encounter. They only have a small talk, one conversation, and that's it. But anyways, after a while, he ended up quitting because he needed to start college. So during that time, he was focused on school and also his YouTube channel. He was paying attention to both of them full time. And because of what he learned editing for the company, he started applying the same things to his own YouTube channel. And because of that reason, he started getting more views. He was also getting more comfortable in front of the camera. So he found his own style. Javier Talan decided to contact him to invite him back to the company. But Gabriel decided to not take the offer because his videos were doing good and he wanted to focus on that. But because Talan saw potential and he wanted to work with him one way or another, he decided to offer to be his manager. Something that Gabriel decided to accept right away. At this point, it was 2010, so it was something that wasn't commonly seen, right? Like it wasn't common to see YouTubers with a manager. During this time of his life, he was also making friends in college. He was taking communication classes, and in one of those classes, he had a group activity with her people that he's never talked to before. But because of the activity, he ended up talking to them and they ended up getting along really well. They all started hanging out, they all started sitting together. I'm gonna put their names on the screen and some information about them in case you're curious, because I don't know, I'm not gonna talk about it, it's gonna be too long. But basically, they were getting closer and closer, and they got to the point where Gabriel decided to invite them to the videos. They will do cameos, they will help whenever there was a scene that needed multiple people. And because of that reason, Gabriel decided to recommend them to Talan, telling him that he should represent the other people too. And Javier said no. He didn't fuck with them, he didn't know them, so he obviously said no. They didn't have that many followers, they didn't bring anything. At that point, but anyways, they didn't mind that. They were still making videos, they were still growing the channel. To the point where they start making series. I'm gonna put the series that they made in the screen because I'm not gonna talk about them. But basically, this series, they were shitty at first. Because you know they were college students trying to make videos, so the acting wasn't great, the camera wasn't that good. But the scripts, the comedy in the videos, it was so funny that people kept watching them. People were asking for more and more, and because every single series and every single episode that they wrote was good, it worked, right? Every single member was growing individually. He saw the potential that everyone had. So in 2011, he decided to give a contract to everyone, right? The contract was an 80-20 contract, right? Which is the standard in the industry. Nowadays, it's normal to see artists getting 80% of their earnings, right? But the thing is, the 80% contract that he did was 80% for the manager and 20% for them, for the people, right? But because they were young and they didn't have any experience, it was new to be a YouTuber, it wasn't something that was commonly seen. They accepted it, obviously. They also received a house, right, for all of them to hang out together to make videos. It was basically the first content house ever. So anyways, they accept and they decide to live together to make videos while also going to college. During this time, the group members were making 2,000 pesos bi-weekly. But nobody saw a problem with that because when they started making videos, they weren't making any money at all. So for them, going from $0 to $100 bi-weekly or $50 a week was a big deal. And also they had a house. But anyway, so not make this video that long, that was in 2011. They keep making videos, they keep getting better quality, better acting, and it gets to the point where they start going to talk shows, they start doing interviews, they started doing commercials like that in TV, in actual TV, and they started doing live shows themselves in big venues around the country. And they didn't see the money of any of that because the manager kept telling them that the company was making a lot of expenses that the YouTubers wouldn't get it. So there was no point in explaining that to them. He will also lie about how much money he was getting from the brand deals or from anything because he's the one making the deals with the companies. The YouTubers didn't have anything to do with that, so they never knew how much money they actually got. And whenever they asked to see a receipt, Javier would make an Excel sheet as proof that that was how much money they got. And they believed it. I don't know. They believed it. And when it came to the live shows, he would tell them that they didn't get any money at all. Every time that they did a live show, they broke even, but they needed to keep doing them because that was the only way for them to be close to the audience and to build a connection with the people that follow you, right? So that was basically like all the lies that he would tell them. And because there was a bunch of arguments about money, he decided to give them the opportunity to work under him, under the company. He told them that if they wanted to make more money, then they needed to work more. So basically, he offered them the opportunity to edit and write scripts for other YouTubers, and it will be a full-time job. It will be 9 to 5. But even then, they were gonna make an extra 2,000 pesos, which is an extra $100 bi-weekly. So even that help or that opportunity wasn't really that much money. So only 3 people took the offer. The rest of the people decided to just focus on the videos and just keep doing what they were doing. So in 2012, they created a company called W2M Enterprises, and that company had 3 owners. Right? It was Gabriel Montiel, the YouTuber, Javier Talan, the manager, and one of the best lawyers in Mexico when it comes to the entertainment industry. He's the one that made the contract for all of them. So he was also like helping with the scamming, right? So because of this, other YouTubers started getting interested in working with him and working with the manager too, because they saw the brands that they would work with, the places that they would be able to go to, and basically all of the opportunities that El Werevertumorro crew had, right? So they will start recommending him as a manager, and because he was the biggest YouTuber in Mexico, everyone wanted to be like him. So they started signing up with him too, with the same manager. So he starts doing the same type of contracts with the other people too. I'm gonna put on the screen like the YouTubers that signed up with him, because I don't know them by heart, but basically they also had like millions of followers. So in 2013 and 2014, he was the manager of the biggest Spanish-speaking YouTubers ever. So because of that reason, whenever any brand wanted to work with any YouTuber, they pretty much had to go through him. Like he, at that point, he was basically, he had all the power, basically. But anyways, going back to the original group, they were still making videos. They have millions of followers. They started opening their own like YouTube channels, and those channels had hundreds of thousands of subscribers and also views, right? But even then, they were still making 2,000 pesos. So they started asking questions. They started, talking to other YouTubers, and that's when they started noticing that things were weird, because they started talking to YouTubers who were making a fraction of the views that they were making, but they were making 5 or 6 times more than what they were making. So they started asking questions. They started reaching out to the brands that they worked with in the past, and some of the companies will send information back, and it wouldn't match up. So basically, they finally found out that the manager was coming them for the past 3 years, but they decided to not confront him, because every time that they will talk to him about it, the lawyer will be there, and the lawyer will use complicated language and use terms that they wouldn't know, so that they will get confused and just give in. And also, while they were digging, they found out that the company that Gabriel was part of, W2M Enterprises, it had lawsuits. It had a bunch of lawsuits against it. So basically in 2013, they were doubting the relationship and like how much money they were getting. And then in 2014, that's when they finally started having like evidence that they were actually right. And also at this point, there was an American company that wanted to buy W2M Enterprises. We don't know how much money it is exactly, but we know it's at least $500,000. So they wanted to buy the company with the channels and the YouTubers, right? But the thing is, the contract, the original contract that they signed, was about to end, and that was one of the conditions that the American company set, right? Because they didn't want to buy a company where everyone left as soon as the contract was over. So they told Javier that he needed to make sure that they were still gonna work under the company once they bought it. So Javier and the lawyer create another contract. This time is for 5 years, right? And it's basically the same thing as the past contract, but this new contract added 2 things, right? The first one is that they needed to share every single social media password that they had. Even if it was a personal social media account, they still needed to share it. And also any content that they created, either videos, tweets, pictures, was not their property. It didn't belong to them, it belonged to the company. And it was gonna be that way for the next 5 years, right? But Talan didn't know that. They already knew that he was scamming them. So at this point, the relationship between the manager and the YouTubers was shitty. Every time that they had a meeting, they would talk about money. And according to some of the members of the crew, they would say that it will almost get physical, like it will get pretty heated to the point where they will make threats between each other. So Javier was being pretty pushy about the new contract because he was telling them that he was doing them a favor because they weren't happy with the relationship anymore. So if they signed the contract, then Javier wasn't going to be the manager anymore. It was going to be the American company. But anyways, to not make the video that long, he basically wanted the new contract signed before the old one ended. So Gabriel and his friends, they weren't planning on signing the contract at all, but they weren't able to just say no to the new contract because he will get suspicious about it. So they decided to pretend like everything was normal while they were figuring out what to do to get out of the situation. So the plan that they came up with was removing all of the channels from the YouTube network that the company had, that W2 Enterprises had, so that Talan and the lawyer wouldn't have any access to it anymore. But because Talan was signed into the email, he would get notifications if there was any changes made to any account. So what they did was that they waited until 3 a.m. when they were 100% sure that Talan was asleep. And then they signed into the network and they started removing the channels one by one. And while one of them was doing that, another person was changing the passwords of every channel so that Talan wouldn't have access to it anymore. So yeah, they do that for a couple hours. They make sure that their channels are 100% safe. And then they start packing everything. They knew that as soon as Talan found out about what happened, he will confront them. He will go to the house that he was paying for. So they decided to pack and leave before he came. So they did that, and they were basically up all night. Some went back to the parents' houses. Some went to like apartments of random friends that they had. So basically, they were just making sure that he wouldn't be able to find them, right? So next morning, Talan wakes up and he finds out about everything. So he starts calling people, he starts contacting everyone who might know where they are. And because he wasn't able to find them that way, what he does is that he fires a couple people who he knew that they were friends with those YouTubers. And because of that, Gabriel and his friends finally contacted him and they scheduled a meeting together. And in that meeting, Talan was screaming. He was asking them why the fuck they did that. And basically they're still playing dumb. They're still acting like they don't know that he was scamming them. They start recording the conversation and they keep acting like they didn't know that he was scamming them because they want to have proof that he himself is saying that he did that, right? And at that point, Talan is pretty much done with them. So he tells them that all they need to do is sign the contract and then they can go their separate ways. But obviously they don't sign it. They ask for more time. And the meeting ends and they go look for lawyers so that they can finally have a lawsuit, right? So they found two, right? But but the thing is, I don't know how they found them or whatever, but those two lawyers also ended up scamming them. Gabriel paid upfront, for their services. But at the end, they will keep like stalling. They will make up excuses. They will say that they were busy with other clients. So basically, they took the money, but they didn't actually do anything. One of their followers, one of the subscribers, who was a lawyer, decided to contact them and tell them that he will help them for free. He wasn't going to do a lawsuit, but he was going to make sure that everything that they own, everything that they did, the channels, the series, the characters that they created, the logos, was properly registered so that it would be officially theirs and the manager wouldn't be able to take it away, right? And that was pretty much all that happened. That was in 2014 and they never got the money back to this day. I wanted to see where Talan was nowadays, right? And I found out that, the company that he created, Rancho Studios, it was open from 2003 until 2014 when, the whole thing happened. And a month later, he created another company called Coyote Media House, which is basically the same thing, different name. And it's still open to this day. So basically, he's still doing the same thing. There wasn't any punishment to him. YouTubers don't work with him. However, brands still do. Because as I said before, he had direct contact with the companies, right? So he told the story to some of the people or some of the contacts that he had to make it seem like Gabriel and all of his friends are immature and they just decided to just say fuck it and not worry about their channels anymore. And there was a bunch of brands who believed that and they refused to work with them anymore. So yeah, basically, I don't know. It's sad. He won, basically. He didn't receive any consequences. Gabriel and his friends are still making videos. They're not together. They're still friends, but they're in their 30s, so they're not roommates anymore. They have families. They have they're married. They have kids. So in their personal lives, they're good. They're happy. When it comes to social media, they're making a fraction of the views that they made back in the day. But apparently, they're saying that right now, even though they have less views and less followers, they're making more money than they ever made while they were working with him. So they're able to sustain themselves. So yeah, basically, they're all happy, they're all friends, and they laugh about the experience because at the moment it was shitty, but right now everything's over, and a lot of people make fun of them because they didn't read the contract properly. But they're saying that nobody knew. There was no way for them to know because they were the first or one of the first YouTubers with a manager, so they didn't know how it works. Nobody knew how it worked back then. And yeah, basically that's the end of the story. And Javier is still out there working. He did a documentary for Maluma. A couple years ago. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you liked it. If you want to support me, you can click the links in my description and support me in any way you want. And yeah, thank you.